Champion yourself at work. That is the topic of today's Voice of Bold Business Radio program number 149. I'm your host, Jess Dewell. Before we get started, I just have to do a shameless plug and say you're listening to this for a reason. Make sure you consider leaving us a review after you've listened to the content and formulated your own opinion and adding to the story of what it means to be a leader today. You are in the right place for conversations about current problems, needs, and necessities that we as business leaders face. You're going to hear a discussion today about what it means to figure out what to champion and go forward with that, with a dash of introspection as well. With us today on our panel is Lynette Davis, who is a mental health peer advocate that writes, organizes events, and facilitates conversations centered on holistic wellness. She is also a virtual assistant. Frank DeDominicis started as a social activist and has become a community change advocate. His work shifts cultures to high-performance organizations. You're going to hear things like, what do we do when we champion ourselves, and how do we get performance? What does freedom mean? What are we leaving behind? How do our personal values play into this? Do our personal and professional values overlap when we step into the role that we play as leader within our organization? That and much more right after this.
Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business, the show that provides everything smart leaders need to evaluate situations, build relationships, and create solutions. Jessica Dewell candidly talks about the skills necessary to build tenacity and do more with less. And now, here's Jessica.
All right, Frank, who do we champion first? Our company, our customers, us, and the reason why?
We champion all three for different reasons. And the first one, and the most important one, is the customer. And why? Because the boss doesn't pay me, the customer pays the boss who pays me. And we also champion the other two. We champion the organization because hopefully our personal values and goals are aligned or close to alignment with the goals and values of the organization. Hopefully, or the culture is nurtured in that direction to create alignment. And last of all, we champion us because teamwork, everything's done in teams these days, and increasingly we're developing better skills of connectivity, not necessarily focus on skills per se, but connectivity. Everywhere I go in my leadership training, I see the focus is on the nature of the relationship. So we champion all three, but first of all, the customer.
Lynette, who do we champion first? The company, the customer, us, and the reasons why?
I believe that we should champion ourselves first. One, you can't give what you don't have. You can't pour into others from an empty cup, or you can't drive your company and those results with a love tank on E. I'll just give a really quick example. Before I hopped on this call, I was super nervous. I was very, very jittery, and I'm used to being on the other side. I'm used to doing the interviewing. If I had come on with all of that, I would have been a wreck. I would have been stuttering. I would have been very worried about all my ums. So basically, my performance would have been quite low. You would not have received the same results if I had come on in that capacity. However, because I championed myself, I paused. I made sure to say a really quick prayer to my higher power. I did some really quick yoga stretches with some deep breaths before I hopped on so that I could center myself in order to present and just be who I am authentically to the two of you and everybody else who's watching. So that's my why.
We've got customer first, because without the value of customer realization, there is no money to come in, and self first, because without taking care of ourselves, we have nothing that would be valuable for customers. Maybe I could take the role of company for this conversation. And if I were to do that, I would say as a leader then, what is invested is one of the most important things that we have. I would want to make sure that people are taking care of themselves to be able to give to customers. And I would also want to make sure that I understand the feedback loops that are existing so that we can take care of customers, not only for what they need right now, but anticipating their needs before they even know what they are. And to do that would be all of us, we're talking about prioritization and maybe even somewhat the prioritization of values. So I'm curious, do you have written down or at least known, and would you be willing to share one of your personal values and the reason that you have that personal value as part of your life?
Yes, I have a list of personal values. Given my age, I'm just turned 67. So my priority is legacy. I thought about this a long time ago. In my 40s, I heard John Maxwell talking about, oh, I'm turning 50 and thinking about my legacy. And I heard that from older people, but now somehow I magically am at that age that I'm thinking, oh, I'm 2/3 through the adventure. I'm in Act 3. And so this is the age of closure and reconciliations and connections and exploration and even more personal growth than ever. So how do I optimize my personal and professional experience in such a way that I can leave a legacy behind? And that's what's driven me to redesign my own business planning. I came at my business plan from two different directions: traditional management by objectives, and then a lot of personal growth transformational work. And I thought, what can I leave behind? And I thought what I can leave behind is basically a train the trainer concept to incorporate all my ideas and workshops and presentations so that other trainers could use my materials, add to it, and boost their careers as well, and receive a little bit of mentorship from me now that I'm at an age of being well seasoned.
Thank you. What do you think, Lynette?
I have values written down. I have sets of values, and some of them actually intersect with one another. So I have my own personal values for my life personally, and then I've documented standards, values, and things of that nature for my work life. A form of legacy is actually one of mine as well. I think I wrote it like impact, actually, but I was basically thinking along the same lines as Frank. But the one that crosses both, that intersects both, is love for me. I am an amateur love researcher.
Be careful what audience you deliver that to.
And sometimes it throws people off because they're like, love, like romance and match. And I'm like, no.
Yes.
I actually study it from a social scientific perspective. The value of love is so very important to my foundation of my work. And I take the definition, I first read it in Bell Hooks' All About Love, but she actually got the concept from Dr. M. Scott Peck. And I'm paraphrasing here. Things that you do, the actions that you take is about the spiritual growth of one another. My value and how I translate it into my work and my personal life is always about how can I release or unleash the gifts that I have in the servitude or service of others.
Hey, Scott, I know you're behind the scenes here, but I think we found our doppelgangers. I'm listening to Frank and I'm like, all of these words have come in some capacity outside of Scott's mouth when we've had conversations like this. And I'm listening to you, Lynette, and I'm like, there's a lot of the stuff that I would say coming right out of your mouth in the conversation that we've had before. What I love about this is that there seems to be a universal thread. Notice I'll use the word love too. Without love, we really don't have much of anything. And without love, we're unable to make the connections to have a lasting legacy. Without love, we're unable to make the impact that we want. So I hear that all the way through. I have 3 values for my work. I have 3 values for my family that my husband and I agreed to. And I have 3 values for myself. And I'm thinking about the Red Direction values. For Red Direction, one of them is resourcefulness. And every single meeting that we ever have for Red Direction with clients, for clients, internally about what's going to happen, we all bring ideas to the table in this concept of resourcefulness. What can we try that we haven't tried yet? What can we do in a different way that will get us the impact or the response, the lasting impression that we want to have? In our lingo, we call it evergreen, so that it works forever and ever. It's timeless, if you will. And so I'm thinking about these values and how you're showing up. Are your personal values your company values?
In my case, yes, because I'm a one-man band. So I am my company. So it's relatively easy. I think if I was working for an employer, that would maybe a different story, maybe not. It's my values that actually motivated me to create a business. I could have very easily taken the comfortable road in the corporate world and taken a paycheck and punched out at 5 and had a life after 5. Instead, I found that what I naturally do when I was employed, when I was off the job, was doing favors for friends. I love helping others. Mm-hmm. And I've noticed a good deal of reciprocity in that sense too. So I don't starve for friendship or love. I have a lot of it. However, I found that in the counseling I was doing informally with friends and small business people, there needed to be some sort of delivery process for this. I couldn't have a cup of coffee with everyone and solve problems or do strategic planning. So that's what motivated me to make a business. And then as I developed my credibility and my chain of referral, I realized I'm not the only rock star out there. There's a lot of talent in the world. And I mean that humbly too. Many of us are gifted, and I'm pleased to be with two talented people today. So my business was meant to be a multi-channel distribution system for those who align with me naturally, natural networking, I call it. Those who click and automatically realize there's a potential for collaboration. And that's why I started my business.
The question was, are personal and business values the same? Mm-hmm. As I said in my previous one, I have 2 different sets. They pretty much intersect. Even if one isn't on my personal side and it's on my business, there's pretty much an underlying tie to both of them. Most of the time, I'm just phrasing it in a different way for business than I would put it for personal, or it would look different in business versus personal. They're different, and I put them in different locations.
That's interesting, because when I started Red Direction, it was a long time ago. We're 14 years old this year, guys. We're 14 years old, which is pretty amazing. I didn't write down the values when I first started, and it turned out to be a personally bad thing for me. It was heavy and overburdened and overbearing, and I thought I was the only one that was going to be able to get all this stuff done. And the teams that I surrounded myself with were all amazing, and I was the short end of the stick is what it came down to. And when it occurred to me, I was like, man, not only am I the bottleneck because everything has to cross my desk, because I can be easily accepting of the I can control it all kind of thing. Everything's got to be my way. But when I had my own values at the center, everything must have been my way. Nobody else got invited to my party. So they showed up, they did what I asked them to do. I see looking back, and I don't know if any of them would ever say this, but there was an element of, well, hey, this is my show. You're here because I'm letting you be here, instead of, hey, I'm so glad we have this in common and you want to be a part of this. Let's create something awesome together. And at that moment, when I made that shift, boy, was that a really big change. I don't even remember if it was conscious or not, but I do remember, well, yeah, I know my personal values. Yeah, I know my work values. And my husband and I, we were talking about family values. What did we want for our family? How did we want to set forth and do that? And he and I had to figure out how to agree on how are we going to run our household, and how will we show up, and what will we put the priority on? Because we all have reactions. We all have things we care about, but we can't care about everything he cares about and I care about, and parent effectively and stay friendly and loving and passionate towards each other, right? So where are the lines? Give me some rules. That was actually further reiterated the fact that I was like, oh, well, what about this concept of values, and how do we champion? Because for me to be an effective leader and to be able to champion everybody that chooses to work with me and come to work at Red Direction and on projects like the Voice of Bold Business Radio, they have to be able to own it as well. And that's one of the cool things. And so my business ones are quality, advocate, and resourcefulness. I'd already shared the resourcefulness part. And my personal ones are truth, curiosity, and elegance. And so I can show up in truth, with curiosity, and in elegance as the leader of the organization. And then I can say, so what is the mission of Red Direction? And I can hold that and go, this is how we do us as a group. This is how we do work together at Red Direction. So other people's values have a seat at the table too, and they just show up in a different way. And so I'm curious, have you ever had a difficult conversation? So talking about all this is like the setup, a difficult conversation where you knew you had to be the bearer of bad news, poor news, something along those lines. You weren't quite sure how you were going to handle it. I want to know, one, yes or no, and will you tell us the story? And two, how did you fall back on your values to champion yourself?
Oh boy. Okay. Okay. This is storytelling time. I had been training a young man who was a chef, and his boss sent him to me saying that he had some problems with self-esteem and self-confidence. And I said, good enough. I don't want to know anything more about him as a trainer. It's better that I don't know him so I can focus on the content and not be biased either way. And I taught this gentleman a way of calming himself when he was in a conflict situation. And I shared an affirmation which originally comes from Bob Conklin, which is, I can't help the way I feel right now, but I can help the way I think and act. I was teaching 3 10-hour-a-day seminars. The report I got back from this gentleman was that he was in the kitchen, he was a chef, and another young man who did not have quite advanced social skills started having a bit of an angerism and picked up a meat cleaver and held it to my friend's face. And instead of being afraid, what my friend reported was he heard that affirmation in his head. I can't help the way I feel right now, but I can help the way I think and act. And he quickly, instinctively knew to be compassionate and say, you know, you're ending your job right now. And the gentleman put the knife down, fell into my friend's arms, weeping, and then he seized the opportunity to walk him out the back door and do a positive termination and started speaking in future tense. What are you doing going forward? Give a call if you need help. And he absolutely diffused a potentially dangerous, explosive situation and did a positive termination. That remains with me, that the impact that we have, the power of our words to influence others is incredible. We should value every moment that we have and value that connectivity, because that one story really motivated me to accelerate my own motivation within my business teaching in the personal growth field.
Let me see if I could condense it. The answer is yes.
Yeah.
In my line of work, I come across a lot of situations, mainly because my hands in so many different businesses. When I first started, before I opened up my current business, which is really a solo practice, at that time, it was a big deal for everybody to have like a boutique or a firm or things of that nature. And I was new and I was feeling very pressured to jump onto the bandwagon. I had about maybe 4 or 5 young women on my team. And I was just growing so much more faster than I wanted to. And everybody was getting paid really well except for me.
You know, that's one of those things we all learn at some point.
Yes.
This is a great story. I love it already.
I came across a circumstance where, mind you, it wasn't like this great marketer or anything like that, where a woman gave me and my company a chance. As a woman in business, because of statistics, it's not a light thing to get business. One of my girls would flake a lot. And at the end of the day, the ball dropped with me. I wanted to be angry and freak out, but I had to remember that value of love and how I wanted my clients to treat me, because I'm human and I know I'm going to drop a ball, not purposely or intentionally, but I'm going to drop a ball. It's just human, even though I'll still kick myself with it. But I have to remind myself, you can't always kick yourself when you're down. I had to take that advice, and it goes back to what I'm saying. You can't give what you don't have. I had to take that, how would you feel if it were you? And I had to take that and then have this conversation with the young woman. And because she did it so often, I had to say, you know, this isn't really a good fit. I'm a new company. You know, we can't really afford to have these type of things happen. You know, I was really happy to talk to her about areas of improvement if she wanted to hear from me about that, which she was open to it. We went our separate ways in peace and love, and she ended up doing amazing things. That was kind of a transition thing for her. She ended up going to Japan and working there and finding love and getting married. I ended up closing that business and opening a business that was more in alignment with me and my values instead of trying to keep up with the Joneses. I guess the moral of the story for me is when I come across those circumstances, I always try to remember, how would I feel in that circumstance? How would I want somebody to treat me? So I need to treat somebody that same way.
There's a lot of champion in both of you. And I'm thinking about performance now, and I'm thinking about championing our own performance. Because in the end, business owner or not, we're in a role, and that role has a responsibility and an outcome. So how do you champion yourself to have the performance to get the results that have been laid out?
One would think that the focus would be on increasing outcomes in performance, and that's important. However, the way I champion myself is to honor who I am, first of all. I am a business person, but that's 1/3 of my life. Self-care comes first in my life. That means family, spiritual, social, education, hobbies, and interests. And if I'm too busy with my fingers stuck in the success machine that I can't break and indulge in some of the hobbies and interests and social connections that nurture me, that provide time for laughter, for animals, for children, for poetry, then I'm not fully alive. And I feel like I would be a hypocrite to what I teach about real productivity, because in the corporate world, I teach, of course, how to be more efficient and get things done, but not just for the benefit of the bottom line, so that that person is less stressed at home and can have better quality time with family, with themselves, for their personal, their quiet time, and for their social world as well. So in champion myself, everything's equally important. I am a musician, given time to my music, given time to listen to others, to counsel friends, because friends always come with problems. I know I bring mine to my friends. That's how I champion myself, by keeping balance. And I actually find that helps me to pace myself. I'm driven naturally. So when I'm in that fast lane of achievement, I find that I can get a lot done, focus on my A priorities, delegate the B's and C priorities, and be enormously productive, but also to step away and realize there's a time to be an empty vessel, to listen, to meditate, to be receptive, not just listening to others, but to be receptive to different ideas and ideas that challenge my own attitudes and values.
So when it comes to performance, my my answer to that is tracking, right? Um, and I do it in a warm and fuzzy way, but it's tracking, because what I have learned through my own work in self-development or personal development and growth is that when in life, I was just kind of going through the motions. But once I began journaling, doing things like vision boards, writing things, documenting them, then I could go back and determine, where was I falling apart in my life so that I can course correct. So in my case, I split my life in, like, I love food. I'm a foodie. I'm a healthy foodie, but I'm a foodie. So I think of my life as a slice of pie or a slice of pizza, and I have it in 6 slices: spiritual, personal, social, physical, financial, and professional. So as I look at those slices, if I see there's a slice that I'm biting out of and another one that's like, hey, I'm being neglected, you're not eating a piece of me, you're not feeding your appetite with this portion of it, then I know that there's going to be some imbalance there. If I'm not getting this proper sleep, when I wake up the next day, the last thing on my mind is trying to meet a certain deadline. Only thing on my mind is I want to go back to sleep and I want to hit the alarm. So I know that if I'm tracking these areas, if I'm writing down and journaling and things of that nature, what's going on in my life? Why was my stomach upset? Oh, well, you ate this taco that you didn't need to be having with the avocado. Remember that extra cheese? Oh, you stayed up all night watching that anime. So, because you just had to watch one more episode, I can center myself again and go, this is what happened this month. This is why this fell apart. This is why my performance wasn't what it was or what it could have been. So tracking.
For those of you that know the 5 love languages, my primary love language is touch. And so this concept of having 12 hugs a day or more to actually thrive and do more than just survive is a reality for me. I like touch. I like eye contact, which is one of the reasons doing voice of bold business by video, radio is great, but this concept of by also video so we can cross distances and still have some sort of connection where I can see you is a great second best to actually being able to sit here and shake your hand or put my hand on your elbow and say, welcome, welcome. So mine's warm and fuzzy that way. I know as long as that is happening, as long as those connections are being made, and I do that one thing, everything else will happen the way that it's supposed to. Because I always plan ahead, and my calendar tells me what I'm supposed to do. So bright, smart me, oh yeah, do this and this and this, set your priorities, and someday they show up on the calendar, and it's like, look, it's time to do them. I'm pretty spontaneous, and I won't get to things if I don't do a little bit of planning, but literally the touchy-feely stuff, the fuzzy is the part. And I'm also thinking, so how did that play out on business, right? Because my next question has to do, when did you have to ask for something that made you really nervous?
I hesitate only because I don't have a strong visual story, but I have a short story about that has to do more with my own sense of deserving and self-concept. I asked my coach, because I believe in receiving direction and not having my ego drive my business. So naturally, I want a project director to direct my projects and discipline me and hold me accountable too. And I did approach a point in my relationship with my business coach where I felt like I had to ask the stupid question. Could I, instead of going from A to B to D, could I go from A to K to T to Z? Could I do something really impossible and not just take my business to the next level, but in a short period of time, take it to the 3rd, 4th, 5th level? As I framed this question in my mind, naturally, little me said, don't do that. That's a stupid question. You ought to just stay on your path and nurture the garden and grow and take advantage of opportunities as they appear. And I thought, no, wait a minute. That's too rational. That's too rational. And I'm sorry, I believe rational thinking can be very dangerous. It's good for planning, thinking, organizing, measurement, tracking. But when it comes to dreams, I think rationality can really get in the way of doing the impossible, because what I define as impossible really comes from a sense of my own sense of adequacy. So I knew when I was bringing this question to my coach, I was really questioning myself, do I really have it in me to push my own personal growth, to push my own limits, to hold myself more accountable, to be even more disciplined than I am? Because we all know the hard way becomes easy and the easy way becomes hard. So I did pose that question, and amazingly enough, my coach is as crazy as I am and decided to believe in me and asked the proper coaching questions about the end result and the bridge to it. And it took a few sessions to design that strategy and specific tactics, but in fact, it really turned out to impact my bottom line in an incredible way to just bring up that crazy idea. How do I go from here to there when I don't have the experience of the middle piece yet? So I do recommend, I know this sounds a little crazy, but I do recommend, particularly to entrepreneurs, that they do not limit themselves to only their own biases. We're always a product of our own biases, but to absolutely have a mentor, feedback, evaluation, some accountability source.
One of the best ways you can champion for what you want is by having like a coach in your corner that you can go to. I have really truly grown a lot because I have an amazing business coach. There have been so many times where I wanted to back out of a lot of things, and she was there going, nope, ask, do it, this is what, and then I would make all kinds, but I don't know how to phrase it. And she was there helping me pull out of knowledge that I have that sometimes I don't realize is already within me. And I think that's what a good coach does. For a quick story, I kind of have two that pop in my head.
Okay.
I think most entrepreneurs and business owners can relate to this one. On the one side, it's the raising the rates. That could be very, very nerve-wracking, especially when you have clientele. And I'm solo practice. Or what they call micro small business owner. I'll speak for myself. I won't say you, me. I grow to love my clients. I love what they're about, which is why I want to work with them. And I want to be a part of their growth. And when I have to do things like, okay, I need to raise my rates, or I need to establish this new boundary, it's scary for me because I am making the assumption about how they'll react to that. And then I get anxiety. That's the part where it's very lucky that I'll have a coach to help me kind of work through that. On the other side is I find this a lot with women, and I work with a lot of women, so that's why I can speak to that. Sometimes we will have the courage to do things for business because it is for the sake of others. Working on our business, however, is another story. And so we don't want to do things like ask for the sale or put ourselves out there to market. We'll easily do it for somebody, like I would happily do AWeber for somebody else. But when it comes to doing my own AWeber, I'm like, oh, goodness gracious, it's time to do my own e-zine. That's why I think it is important to have somebody championing you. I heard this phrase, and I'll end it with this, from one of the first business coaches I encountered. She wasn't mine, but to this day, I really admire her and look up to her. She said, it is hard to see the picture when you're the frame.
That's true. We do need team us, don't we? Yeah. Team us. I have a dentist, right? I have a chiropractor. I have my husband. I consider everybody on my team part of team me, because at least in the red direction realm. And many of them I've worked with so long, you work with somebody long enough, they're going to see some of your warts. You can't fake that stuff. And in fact, I used to have the most anxiety that people would find me out, whatever it might be. They were going to just find out about it. I'm like, what is it? I don't know, but they're going to find out, right? I don't know. That imposter syndrome. I was listening to both of your stories and I went looking for Freedom, the Courage to Be Yourself. It's an Osho book from page 29, and it's in a little box on the page. And it says, you can have freedom, but the cost is to accept responsibility in its totality. Some of the things I think we play small. We play small because it's easier to not accept the responsibility that we have been given or have the opportunity to take on. And I'm not sure why that is. What do you think about that in terms of the responsibility of stepping into, whether it's Gary Barnes and he talks about our light, whether it's me and I talk about step into the shoes that you were given, whether it's playing small. You had said, Frank, little me. I'm curious, what is the cost of the responsibility and how do you find the way to accept it?
I think of a sentence from the end of Catherine Ponder's book, The Dynamic Laws of Healing, which says that all healing begins with personal responsibility. I absolutely believe that. And I think there's another piece to it that has to do with change management. We play small, we stay in patterns, our comfort zones, as they say, because that preserves sanity for us. That preserves our current self-image. That preserves our current level of self-esteem. So we stay, quote unquote, normal. However, to stretch means that I learn to accept change, and the triggers of change are always strong emotions. Most of us, when we experience strong, and I mean usually negative emotions, shy from that and make the negative emotion the problem. When I look at the negative emotion as a yellow flag, a signal of some deeper issue, what is this change I'm afraid of? Why am I getting so upset at what someone said, at a text, at an email? What's really behind this? And oftentimes it's my own fear of change, my own resistance to change, my own lack of confidence in my ability to manage change, which in itself is not really an accurate phrase. How do we manage change? Life is flow. Human beings are dynamic, beautiful, wonderful metaphysical creatures evolved in the nanosecond. How do we manage that momentum in our own growth? We don't manage it. We accept change as we accept the weather. So my attitude now in looking at emotional storms, such as anger or conflict, is the same way I look at the weather. When there's a beautiful storm coming over the high mesa and my neighbors are running inside saying, get an umbrella, get inside, it's a hailstorm. I'm going, oh, where's my doggone GoPro? Help me set up this tripod. And let's capture this beautiful moment of visual poetry that's been provided to us. That has been a big shift in my looking at change, to embrace change. And that's what works for me and has helped me overcome my own resistance to change and my ability to teach change management as well.
Yeah, what would you add to that, Lynette?
As soon as you pointed out that book, Freedom, I was like, I think I know where she's going with this. The first book or writings that popped in my head was Escape from Freedom by Eric Fromm. For anybody who wanted to really dig deeper in there, I would suggest reading that.
Just a little light reading.
But I guess the best way for me to wrap my mind around it is, it's so funny because I was literally just having this conversation not too long ago with somebody I was interviewing for my blog. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about the hero's journey. And the hero's journey is the point where the hero starts to recognize that they are being called to this journey of awakening and being all that they can be. Then they have this moment and they run from it because it's like, oh my goodness, I can't do the things that I do, even though I don't want to do those things anymore. And I'm not ready for this. I don't think I am enough for it. I feel inadequate. And we see this theme in so many stories throughout our literature, spiritual texts. It seems like this is just one of those human conditions. What is the cost? I'm going to give you a very practical example about the cost. Before I started my business, and probably people who are listening, they'll probably go, I knew it when I say what I'm going to say. I used to work in the field of addictions.
Okay.
And you can probably hear the way I talk and I'm saying things. You probably can go, she sounds like a 12-stepper. And when I worked in that field, you do become very familiar with 12-step process and work. And what I've learned, the cost of not wanting to do the steps, and I don't mean the 12 steps, the steps towards journeying to become the hero of your own life, is that you remain stuck where you are. And what happens, especially for people who are struggling with addiction, is they get to certain stages and they just can't move past it. So they become like dry drunks.
Yeah.
So those are the consequences. You have to be comfortable with uncertainty. That's the name of the book. Comfortable with uncertainty.
One of the things I say is fly in the face of uncertainty.
I say make friends with stress and learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Okay, so in all of that, there's this place of pause. I have a lot of names for it. There's actually the pause, right? Like the pause. But then there's the pause of think time, where we take a time out and we either dream or we stop or we do something else with that time. There's also the pause that we get from taking the time to pray, meditate, be with nature without any other distractions, things of that nature. What are your go-tos to rejuvenate, to find courage, to really own everything that you want? Where do you find your pause?
I'm fortunate because of where I am geographically to be able to find hermitage in the Rocky Mountains. Although I live just 4 miles from the foothills, within 90 minutes I could be at 10, 11,000 feet with the bears and deer and thick woods and isolation and really deep meditation time. One of my favorite things to do is to wake up early and to drive up to Peak Highway, which is the highest highway in the U.S., to catch the sunrise coming over Kansas. and it's cold, and I have to start at 3:30 in the morning to catch the sunrise. And I don't know what it is, but I'm up there in the dark, realizing that if I'm outside, I'm vulnerable to the animals, but somehow there's not a fear. And as the sky becomes light and the curtain of navy blue leaves and the stars disappear and that beautiful glow comes up over the east, I don't know, I'm thoughtless. I'm without thought. My to-do list somehow just evaporates. And I'm just there, I'm present like another healthy animal in the woods. And I spend that time, I've been meditating for years, and as you guys know, I'm sure you guys are meditators too, it takes time to get to that place of, as a meditator, you think about thinking and then you think about not thinking, but really it's movement that moves one out of thinking. So when I'm walking in the woods at 4:45 in the morning and the sun's arising and I'm miles from any human, somehow I'm not thinking at all. I'm not hearing self-talk. I'm busy looking at the beautiful evolving canvas in front of me. And when I return to my urban existence, I feel somehow filled up spiritually, emotionally, and fueled. Just one of the ways that I recharge. And I strongly believe in retreat, and in the positive sense of the word, retreat in order to rejuvenate and to refresh, but more to be the empty vessel, not to be, as many people use prayer to beg for favors from God. I really look at meditation in a different way, as being open to the unknown. And I let my thinking pause by simply getting lost in the beauty of the visual moment.
I am located outside of a city, but right outside of Philadelphia, there is a lot of nature. I mean, we're called the Garden State for a reason. I have learned that movement is how I take pause. You know, when I first came onto the space and everybody was talking about meditation and everything, I tried all kinds of mindfulness meditations and sitting and trying to hum. And I was like, this is not working for me. And then I started stressing about how it wasn't working until I came across, and I'm probably going to mispronounce it, the Enneagram. And the Enneagram introduced me to ways that my type could meditate. And it turned out my type does meditation better for like movement. Yoga is better for me. Dancing is how I can pause. Walking, meditation. So I love to go out in nature. I love it when I'm there and I'm out in nature, and I just absolutely love it just as much as I love dancing and letting the world around me go away, fade away as I lose myself in movement. That's how I pause. That's how I can finally quiet my brain.
That's cool. All right, we have time for one more question. What makes it bold to be the champion for yourself, your work, or your company?
The tendency for individuals is to conform to the norms of the group. That is so comfortable. However, those who are true leaders have a sense of boldness, adventuresomeness, and willingness to explore new ideas and to test assumptions around those ideas.
It takes courage. And it's such a simple concept, courage. But a lot of us don't want to embody courage. We rather somebody make rules for us in the form of how-tos. But when you champion yourself, you design that how-to.
You heard it here. This is a ton of great information. One of us took the customer perspective as being who to champion. One of us took the self as who to champion. And based off of those perspectives, we wove together a story, an experience, a concept of work champions and championing at work. I say, go over to the Voice of Bold Business Radio's website, thevoiceofboldbusiness.com/p149. That is thevoiceofboldbusiness.com/p for program 149. Search the website for Champion Yourself at Work. I'm telling you, there is stuff here that your experiences will benefit from being part of this conversation. Go rate the program, subscribe, hear this ongoing conversation of what it means to be a leader today, and most importantly, continue this conversation. Champion yourself at work. Take the time to think about, how do I do that? What makes what I'm doing worthwhile? How does the work that I participate in and show up for, how does that create a bigger picture? What does that do for the end result of the products and services that I am supporting and making possible? It's the openness, it's the practical application of everything that we've talked about that will allow us to step up and champion ourselves at work.
Subscribe at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com and get more information, program notes, and past episodes. Bold leaders approach each situation and focus on action to achieve a higher level of leadership. Jessica Dewell, your business advocate, is the host of the Voice of Bold Business Radio. Thank you for joining us.